racing. Here is the next big thing. Explicit bolted in the 10 lead by 3 lengths Alpha Zulu. Valpolicella in front. Zohar Bales trying hard. He dives him. Is Valpolicella.
One of the great races on the calendar. As they turn, Scalacci and Tim Zhu. Scalacci grabbed by Tim Zhu. Oh, he's good. Tim Zhu takes out the Oz Cup by a length and a half.
Hello and welcome to this preview of Week 3 of the Australian Cup Carnival at the Meadows, the culmination of what has been such an amazing period of greyhound racing. My name's Jason Adams. To do this preview, I'm joined by the face of the Meadows in Corey Smith. And Smithy, it's a big period of time and it's great to be getting to the end of it after what's been such a massive couple of weeks.
It has been a massive couple of weeks. It's been a ripping carnival so far. We've seen storyline after storyline. We've seen fast performances. We've seen strong performances. We've seen it all. But it all culminates this Saturday night where it's going to get even better, Patch.
That it will, and now it's time to look back on some of the big names that have won this race in the past. It's full of history, one of the best honour rolls the sport has to offer, and what's most relevant this time around, Smithy, we look down to 92-93. China Trip won it back-to-back. The only one to do so at this stage.
Well, before you and I were born, Patch, so unfortunately we've never seen a back-to-back Australian Cup winner, but we're a chance this Saturday night with Tim Zhu. He won it last year. He was enormous last year. He was great through that series, and he's been unbelievable this year. You could argue even better than he was last year, the way that he's gone through it. He's got another wide draw to contend with, though, and just having a look at some of these names, Tommy Shelby, how can we forget that race? Fanta Bale, one of my absolute favourites. So you could just go on and on about this honour roll.
Now let's take a look at the biggest Group 1 of the night this Saturday, being the Australian Cup field. And there it is. And look, if we were to come out of Saturday night semi-finals just gone and handpick the big name greyhounds that we wanted in the field, would have been very close to what we've got in front of us for the final.
Yeah, we're already talking about this race as one of the classic additions, and that's because it's just speed versus strength. We've got dogs like Mapunga Tully, Excavation, Deadly Avenger, Flying Zulu, that last week's meeting, they were in the top 10 for the first split, and then you go to the opposite end of the spectrum and you've got dogs that were in the top 10 for the run home. Zipping Hopkins, Kanya All Class, Vincent Bale, Tim Zhu. Speed v strength is the theme of this Australian Cup, and there is so much class throughout it.
Cracking race, cracking speed map, a lot to unpack, and now it's time to do that semi-final by semi-final from last Saturday night. The first of them we're going to take a look at is the win of Vincent Bale, which he jumped from box 1. The other one to progress from this race, of course, was number 5 in Zipping Hopkins Smithy. And being there on the night, this lot got the worst of the conditions because the rain really fell leading up to it.
Yeah, it did. In the lead up, the few minutes beforehand and during the race as well, it was really, really wet. You and I both saw that on course, and we were talking about speed versus strength before. This is a prime example of it. Vincent Bale is normally a strength sort of dog. He runs 5.20 to the first split, which is not going to be fast enough to lead an Australian Cup, whereas Zipping Hopkins gets into his work late and starts charging home. Both of those dogs you'd expect to be back in a field, though, in an Australian Cup. But here's the head on here, Patch, and you see Vincent Bale, he keeps a pretty straight line from box 1. Zipping Hopkins wants to get down from box number 5 down to box 1, which is where he'll jump from this weekend.
Yep, indeed it will be, and Vincent Bale from 3. So we can see him stay a little bit off the rails, not exactly hugging the fence, which would suggest that box 3 is probably not going to be a bad result for him at all.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a negative whatsoever. The speed drawn outside of him will try and come across, and I think he's happy being in behind a few dogs and picking them off late. And Zipping Hopkins, we know exactly what he does. Brooke Ennis doesn't mind what he does in his first split because that's not his go. He's always going to flop out. He's always going to be the dog that's back in the field and charging his way through. The team Ennis are just going to be hoping that he's got his jockey on board right.
Let's move on to the second semi-final that was run and won Saturday night. It was won by Mapunga Tully, who was, of course, so good in her heat. And the other one that come out of this was Flying Zulu from box 1. So we can see there at that point the speed from Lakeview Emily. She finds bother. She's okay and come out of that fine. But the battle up front, it was really a turning of the tables from what we see at Sandown a few weeks ago. And the important part about this is their time to the first 50 metres were identical. Throw in Deadly Avenger, who ran the same time too to 50 metres, it's going to be helter-skelter in the run early.
It certainly would, and you saw another string to Mapunga Tully's bow there where she had to be tough, she had to be able to get around a wall of them, and she did. And Flying Zulu here, he keeps his straight line from 1. He moves out to box number 7, which is, it's pretty much a role reversal here. Mapunga Tully goes from 7 to 4. She's going to have a different sort of challenge, but there's not much speed drawn underneath her on Saturday night. So that could be an advantage. She'll run a dead straight line, whereas Vincent Bale and the likes drawn on her inside won't really jump as well. So we're looking forward to this one, but Mapunga Tully looks like she's going to be drawn pretty nicely in box number 4 come Saturday night.
Yep, indeed. And we can see in the last couple of weeks she wants to use that middle part of the track. So although she jumped from a middle draw, don't think she's going to want to shift off, but she's going to run a pretty true line in that run to the first turn. Now to have a look at what was definitely the most entertaining of the semi-finals on Saturday. The win of Tim Tszyu, of course, come out of the team lead the week prior. Was just amazing. Here he is jumping from box 8, which we all thought was going to be difficult for him, Smithy. The other one to progress out of this, Deadly Avenger from box 3.
Absolutely. I think most of us on the night probably stopped watching Tim Tszyu, and we had to come back and watch this exact replay to see where he'd come from. He got right back in the field. You see Hotel Whiskey 1 out there leading at the moment. Deadly Avenger, who had to be tough and had to be gritty and had to show some strength that hasn't always shown in its races, and it did. But here comes Tim Tszyu. He just absolutely cuts loose, and visually the most impressive win of the night.
Yep, indeed. And what I loved about him is here he is jumping from box 8. We know he rather prefers to be down towards the inside, but it's probably not something he would have done last year, hooking to the outside late, but he's just a much more complete race dog.
He is. That's the best way to put it. He's a more complete race dog than he was last year, and he managed to win the race last year. So that's a bit of an ominous sign for his rivals, and this is the part of the race where he just absolutely cuts loose. He's boxed in here. You think he's got nowhere to go. He pushes to the outside, which is what he's added to his game, and he just absolutely dominates in that run home, in that home straight.
Race-winning move, that is for sure. And Deadly Avenger's point of view, he had the fastest first 20 metres of these Australian Cup finalists. So for Joe Borg and his camp, they'll be hoping he can get out in exactly the same way from an awkward draw in the final this week. Now to take a look at the 4th and final semi that was run on Saturday. It was won by Excavation. There was expectation on him after really coming into it after a good performance in the team lead. The other one to point out here is Kenya All Class from box 1.
Yeah, so box 5 here, Excavation, it suits. It does not matter where he's drawn. He's got plenty of early speed. What does matter is getting to the front. He was able to do it in this race. There wasn't a huge amount of speed in it, and this is where you see Kenya All Class absolutely take off down the back. He's a dog that's won a Group 1 over 700 metres. His back end of the race is always going to be stronger. Shifts off a couple, and once he gets clear air, then he takes off. But Excavation is the sort of dog that needs to get out in front, and you can see it from here that he runs a pretty straight line from box number 5. So being drawn off the track is no real disadvantage. Kenya All Class hugs the rail early, and then it's about this point where he sees the clear air and shifts off a couple of dogs, and that's when he really takes off down the back and shows that mid-race pace, and then eventually shows that run home, which was the fastest run home of the meeting on last Saturday night. So the boxes that they've drawn, I don't think any disadvantage coming into this Saturday night. But you can see Excavation shifting off a little bit late as well, which will come into fruition if he's out in front.
And comparing Kenya All Class, not only just his run home, which you mentioned, which was the best of the program, but his last 100 metres specifically as well. 5:85, he covered that in. That is almost a length faster than the next best, which was, of course, Zipping Hopkins hitting the line like a runaway train. So there's a look at all of the runners that will line up in the final this week and their performances last Saturday night. Now for the all-important tip, Smithy. Who do you think is going to win the Australian Cup for 2025?
Generally, I'm always drawn towards taking a dog that has early speed, and the dog in this race that I think is drawn well that has the early speed is Mapunga Tully. Box number 4, not necessarily the box that you immediately think of as a good draw, but 1, 2 and 3 we spoke about. Zipping Hopkins, Kenya All Class, Vincent Bale. There's not much speed there. I think Mapunga Tully, the only female in the race, is going to be able to get to that rail first, and if she gets to the rail in front, she's going to be really hard to run down, as evidenced by her last 2 weeks.
In terms of my thoughts on the race, I'll be tipping Vincent Bale. He's a powerhouse, and I really feel the box draw gives him a big opportunity on Saturday night. When you look at who's drawn on his inside, he's got Kenya All Class in 2. I expect Vincent's going to show a bit more pace than what he will. And then Zipping Hopkins from box 1, where we know with the way he handles his early split, it may as well be a vacant box with no disrespect to him. We know what he does in the second half of the race. But with Mapunga Tully in 4 as well, we saw earlier on how much she wants to be in that middle part of the track. So I really feel Vincent gets some clear air to open up and do his thing on the biggest stage that he's seen so far in his career. So there's a look at the Group 1 Australian Cup for 2025 this Saturday night at the Meadows. We'll take a break and be back with the Group 1 Rookie Rebel.